The studio of The View was a circus of noise and light long before the cameras started rolling. Producers shouted last-minute cues, audience coordinators ushered in the cheering crowd, and the air buzzed with a strange kind of tension. The kind that only followed when someone big was about to walk through those doors. Today, that someone was Tom Cruise. His latest film had just shattered box office records, and fans had been camping outside the building since dawn. The man was a living legend, charisma distilled into motion, but everyone backstage knew something else too. Joy Behar was planning to hit him with questions he wasn't expecting. When the countdown started, 3, 2, 1, the lights blazed on. The music swelled, and Joy Behar, ever the ringmaster of morning television, flashed her practiced grin. Welcome back to The View. You guys are in for a treat today. We have with us one of Hollywood's most iconic stars, actor, producer, daredevil, and man who refuses to age, Tom Cruise. The crowd's roar was instant, thunderous. Tom strode out from behind the curtain, that unmistakable smile cutting through the brightness. He waved, shook a few hands, and greeted the co-hosts with easy charm. Everything about him was calculated but natural. A man in control of his image, yet warm enough to make you forget that. He took his seat at the center of the panel, the applause still echoing. "Thank you," he said, leaning into the mic. "Great to be here." "Love the energy," Joy smirked. "We try to keep it lively." "You should know a thing or two about that. You've been hanging off cliffs, airplanes, helicopters, and somehow still look younger than half of us." The audience laughed. Tom chuckled too, nodding. "Clean living," he said playfully. "And good stunts." For the first few minutes, everything ran smoothly. They talked about his latest movie, the insane action sequences, the global shoot locations, his dedication to doing every dangerous stunt himself. Clips played on the screen behind them, showing Tom sprinting across a rooftop, diving off a cliff, and holding onto the wing of a plane mid-flight. The audience gasped and applauded. "You're nuts," Joy said, shaking her head. "You know that, right?" "I've been told that a few times," Tom replied, smiling. Laughter filled the air again. For a moment it was easy, warm, engaging television. But Joy wasn't satisfied with easy. She had that glint in her eyes, the one producers knew too well, the glint that meant she's about to stir the pot. "So, Tom," she began casually, flipping through her cue cards, "you've had such an incredible career. Movies, philanthropy, the whole thing. But you've also had your, let's say, strong opinions over the years." Tom glanced at her, still smiling, but just slightly tighter now. "Strong opinions are part of being human," Joy nodded. Sure. But let's go back a bit. You made headlines years ago for some pretty controversial statements about mental health, remember that?" The air shifted instantly. Even the laughter from the audience seemed to freeze in midair. Tom's jaw moved slightly, just enough to show he'd heard that question before and probably hoped he wouldn't hear it again today. He kept his tone light. "That was a long time ago, Joy." "I know," she said, smiling in that sharp way that wasn't really a smile. "But people still talk about it. You were very vocal, you know, about psychiatry, medication. Some people thought it was a bit extreme." The camera zoomed in subtly, catching the flicker in Tom's expression, that microsecond when calm and irritation meet. He took a slow breath. "Look, I think what people forget is context. I was trying to say that people should be careful about what they put in their bodies. It wasn't about judging anyone who gets help." Joy nodded, but her eyes were already narrowing. "Right, but you said, and I quote, psychiatry is pseudoscience. That's not exactly..." "Cautious language." Tom's smile vanished completely this time. "Again, that was a long time ago," he said evenly. "I've learned a lot since then." The other co-hosts shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension brewing. One of them tried to cut in. "Let's focus on the film for a second." But Joy wasn't done. No, I think this is interesting. Because, Tom, you've always been so in control. You do your own stunts, you produce your own films, you even fly your own jets. It's like you've built your career around control. Would you say that's accurate? Tom turned his gaze to her, the calm now glacial. I'd say I like doing things right. That's not control. That's professionalism. Joy's grin widened slightly. Oh, I get that. But do you ever feel like maybe you take it too far? I mean, there are stories about you being intense on set, the crowd murmured. A few gasps, some uneasy laughter. Tom's posture didn't move, but the atmosphere in the room felt like a bowstring pulled too tight. The moment the red light above the camera switched off, the studio air seemed to collapse under its own weight. The crowd's applause was cut short by the cue to go to commercial, but their faces were still wide-eyed, a mix of excitement and disbelief. Some whispered. Some just stared at the man at center stage who was no longer smiling. Tom Cruise stood up slowly, his chair scraping the floor. "Tom, wait!" Joy Behar started, her voice softer now, the humor gone. He didn't answer. He pulled off his mic clip and handed it to a startled stagehand. For a second, the sound tech didn't move, just stared at him. Then, Tom said calmly but firmly, "Thank you," and started walking toward the side curtain. The audience murmured louder now, a wave of confusion spreading through the rows of seats. Cameras kept rolling, though technically they were off-air. Producers shouted through headsets, and the stage manager motioned wildly for someone to intervene. One of the co-hosts, Alyssa, sitting to Joy's right, leaned toward her with a nervous laugh. "What did you do, Joy?" Joy exhaled, her hand still gripping the cue cards. "I didn't do anything. I just asked questions." But her voice trembled slightly. Tom didn't stop walking until he reached the narrow hallway that led to the dressing rooms. Behind him, Marla, one of the show's producers, jogged to catch up. "Tom, hey! Can we just talk for a second?" He paused only when he reached the door marked Guest Lounge. "You got your show," he said quietly. "You got your moment." Marla tried to keep her voice even. "It's not like that. You know, Joy, she pushes people. That's the format." Tom turned, eyes sharp but calm. "There's a difference between asking a question and trying to humiliate someone on live television." Marla opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "It's fine," he said, quieter now. "I don't play that game. Not anymore." He stepped into the lounge and closed the door behind him. Inside, the noise faded instantly. The room was softly lit, a small oasis of calm, a couch, a mirror, a table with untouched fruit. Tom stood in front of the mirror for a long time, staring at his reflection. His face was composed, but his eyes told a different story. He had handled Confrontation all his life, studios, tabloids, co-stars, critics. He'd been painted as controlling, intense, impossible. Maybe sometimes he was, but he'd always tried to keep it professional, focused, grounded. He believed in his work. He believed in control, not as power, but as precision. And yet, here he was, being dragged through the mud for it again. He took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair. Outside the door, he could hear Marla still talking quietly to someone on her headset. Probably PR damage control already. Meanwhile, back on the set, Joy Behar was sitting silently as the stage crew reset for the next segment. The other co-hosts exchanged awkward glances, whispering about what just happened. Sunny Hostin leaned closer and said under her breath, "You might have gone too far that time." Joy shot her a look. "Oh, please." "He's a grown man. I just asked a question." "Yeah," Sunny said carefully, "but you asked it like you were trying to start a fight." Joy sighed, fanning herself with her cue cards. "I wasn't fighting. I was doing my job. He's got to know we don't do puff pieces here." But she could feel it, that creeping heat in her chest. The one that came when she knew she'd lost control of the narrative. Tom Cruise walking off the View wasn't just a bad moment. It was a viral one waiting to explode. In the control booth, the executive producer muttered, "This'll be everywhere by the time he's out the door." He was right. Within minutes, audience members' phones lit up with clips. Someone had filmed Tom's final words. "Don't pretend it's about honesty when it's really about headlines." It was already spreading across social media, paired with hashtags like Tom Cruise walkout and Charles Joy Behar clash. In the lounge, Tom's assistant slipped in quietly. Your car's waiting, she said. But the studio's asking if you'll reconsider going back out for a closing segment. They said they'll keep it friendly. Tom didn't answer right away. He just stared at the table where a mug of untouched coffee sat cooling. They always say that, he murmured finally. Friendly until it's not. Hi, back inside, Joy sat in her dressing room with her phone in hand. Notifications buzzed nonstop. Headlines, clips, comments. Tom Cruise walks out after heated exchange with Joy Behar. Viewers divided after on-air clash. Joy pushes too far?